The night in Cairo was heavy with breath, warm, restless, waiting. I could smell the storm before it reached the alleys. The sand always warns those who still know how to listen. The market slept in colors, gold dust, faded cloth, My child, Noel, followed close behind, his steps light, his heart not. He said the air tasted like cinnamon. He was right. The storm often hides behind. When the first tart broke loose, I knew the city was no longer safe for small paws. We ran, through baskets, through darkness, through time. Behind us, the wind found its voice. Ahead, the dunes waited like sleeping beasts. When we left the last lamp behind, the stars were already dimming. He asked why the sky had lost its lights. I told him. Because we reached the ridge of a dune shaped like a dragon's back. The sand below shifted, breathing. I listened. The sound was not of wind. It was of calling. Something ancient moved beneath us, a pulse, slow, heavy, alive. Follow it, I told myself. But the heart that listens too closely to ghosts learn. Still, I stepped forward. He followed without question. The sand gave way, soft, deceptive. We fell, not fast. When I opened my eyes, moonlight was falling through a crack in stone. We were inside the earth now, where the air smells of time. Walls of rock curved around us, carved with cats who watched and never blinked. Each one seemed to breathe through the dust, guardians of what no longer sleeps. My whiskers brushed the carving of a cat seated before a gate. I pressed my paw to its heart, and the stone shivered as though remembering touch. A slit of light appeared, narrow, trembling like a held breath. The air beyond it was cooler, cleaner, as if the world had been washed and left to dry for centuries. We entered. The moon followed us, pouring its bones through the crack above. The floor beneath glittered faintly, scales of glass shaped like feathers. I felt the rhythm again, 3 beats and 1 pause. That was the desert's heartbeat, the same that had called us here. Every sound was sharp, deliberate, even silence seemed made of intention. I told myself, fear is not the opposite of faith. We moved through a hall of columns shaped like claws of gods. Light danced on dust, ghosts of candles that had burned long before us. Then, a faint sound, a click, like a thought becoming real. He had stepped on something, a towel marked with a cat's claw. The sound stopped the world. The air thickened into waiting. I held my breath, counting the heartbeats between fear and understanding. Then came the sound. The temple exhaling, the gate behind us closing with a slow sigh. We were inside something alive, and it had just awakened. The floor thrummed. I felt it through my paws, the rhythm again. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. A message, a pattern. We followed it left, where the air smelled faintly of iron and dust. Symbols covered the walls, carved so deep they looked like veins. I read them with my whiskers, the way one feels rain before it falls. They spoke of a river made of stars, of cats who guarded memory from the wind. We came to a room where mirrors hung like still water. In their reflection, I saw not what was, but what could be. A mother and her child walking toward the light, and the light walking toward them. He touched the surface. It rippled like a sigh waking from sleep. The mirrors glowed, gentle, forgiving, and for a moment, I saw us held in a sun that no longer existed. When the image faded, I realized something simple. We were not trespassers. We were the memory. The sand outside howled, but the wind here had a pulse, slow, maternal. We stood still, breathing in rhythm with the stone. Then the wall ahead opened like an eyelid. The path led downward, into darkness that felt like promise. I knew this was only the beginning. Because the desert does not end where sand stops. It ends where the heart forgets. We stepped forward together, to shadows walking inside a heartbeat older than the world. And for the first time, I was not afraid of the dark. Because I carried my own sun. The deeper we walked, the quieter the air became. Even our thoughts began to whisper. The tunnel narrowed, carved smooth by unseen hands. I could hear the sand breathing behind the walls, slow, steady, like the sleep of something enormous. Light returned, faint and trembling, bouncing off shards of crystal buried in the stone. Then the passage opened, a chamber lined entirely with mirrors of sand. They did not reflect us. They reflected possibilities. In one, I was alone. In another, he was the one leading me. Noel asked if the mirrors could lie. I told him, only to those who fear the truth. He touched the glass, it rippled, and the room sighed awake. 1,000 reflections blinked alive, each one humming softly, like wind trapped in crystal. Shapes formed inside the mirrors, cats made of silver dust, chasing moons that were their own. I felt their gaze pierce through my chest, as if measuring the weight of my heart. Then, from the farthest mirror, a figure stepped forward, a cat taller than thought, made of... Its voice was not a sound but a vibration in my ribs. You walk within the memory of pasted. The air trembled. My breath caught fire in my throat. I wanted to kneel, but it felt wrong. Mothers do not... It looked at No, and smiled. A smile made of light breaking through fear. Then the image dissolved. Only the mirrors remained, breathing softly. No asked if that was the goddess. I said, perhaps it was her dream or art. We moved deeper. The rhythm of 3 beats, one pause, followed. Some mirrors showed us walking ahead, others already gone. Time bent here. Past and future folded like fabric over our pause. He laughed once, a sound too alive for the silence. It echoed, multiplied. I told him not to laugh too loud. Echoes here remember better than gods. One mirror cracked, clean down the middle. Behind it, a faint light pulsed like a heartbeat. I pressed my paw against it. The glass was warm, alive. It opened quietly, like a breath held too long. Beyond it lay dark, the kind of darkness that promises revelation or loss. We entered without speaking. The mirrors behind us sealed themselves in silence. For the first time, I realized we were not walking forward, but downward, to somewhere below. The desert was still beating, waiting for us to find its voice. The tunnel curved, and I could no longer tell where stone ended and silence began. The air trembled, not from wind, but from memory trying to breathe again. Each step sounded older than the one before, as if we were walking inside. No stayed close. I could feel his warmth through the hush, that small pulse, his light. The floor glowed faintly, tracing symbols like veins under skin. A circle, a sun, a cat's eye that never closed. And at the center, a single word carved in. Return to what? I wonder. To the beginning, or to the truth? The ground trembled as if the temple had heard my thought. From the dark ahead came a light. Not white, not gold, but we followed it until the corridor opened into a chamber vast as sky. There, the ceiling shimmered like water, and beneath it hung a sphere of sand, spinning slowly, and every grain within it glowed. Each one, a memory waiting to be spoken. I knew, without knowing how, that this was the heart of the pyramid, the first breath of Bastet herself. The voice that came was not sound, it was vibration, low and infinite. Child of dusk, mother of dawn, you carry my silence in your bones. The air thickened. No pressed against me, trembling. His work caught the glow. Do not fear, I whispered to him. If the dark calls your name. The sphere pulsed, 3 beats, one pause, the rhythm of the desert. Now inside, the sand around us rose, swirling without wind, forming shapes, tails, ears, eyes. They bowed to us, these spirits of forgotten cats, their bodies shimmering like mirages. One of them, tall, radiant, stepped forward, and in her eyes I saw sunrise over 10. Her mouth moved, but the words were inside me, every fear you faced. Then a single grain of sand floated from her palm, and rested between my... It burned, but gently, like love learning its own strength. When the light faded, the spirits were gone. Only the echo of the chamber grew quiet again, that sacred, endless kind of quiet that hums beneath all things. No looked up at me, his eyes, once dark, now glowed faint gold. He asked what it meant. I told him, it means the world has begun to listen to you. We turned back toward the tunnel, but the way behind had vanished, sealed in light. There was no going back now. Only forward, into the whisper that would become our destiny. As we stepped into the new passage, I heard it, the soft, endless murmur of sand becoming the sound that was both farewell and welcome. Somewhere above, dawn broke, but down here. And so began the journey into Bastet's heart. Not to seek gods, but to remember what it means to love in the dark. Because every story begins again, where silence learns to breathe. And every sunrise, my child, is just the sand forgiving the night. Silence returned after the storm of light. It hummed softly, as if the earth was exhaling. The stairs wound downward, carved from black stone. They glowed faintly, breathing through cracks. Each step echoed twice, once behind us, once somewhere deeper, unseen. No whispered my name, but another voice answered, softer, thinner, almost. He thought it was me. I knew it was the wall. The pyramid remembers every sound and repeats them to test your heart. He called again. This time the echo used his name. Who are you? He asked. The answer came back. I told him, echoes are mirrors made of air. They only repeat what... Then came another sound. A meow, long, stretched. It came from below, and the stone trembled like skin touched by memory. We walked faster, guided by the rhythm under our feet. 3 beats, one pause. The air thickened. This moved like fog trying to remember its form. At the end of the hall stood a door made of sound. Vibrating, invisible, alive. When I touched it, it opened, not with force, but with recognition. Inside, silence was so complete it hurt. Every breath felt stolen. He tried to speak, but his voice fell like a feather dropped into the peat. Then, from the wall, came the faintest sound. A child's meow, cracked by so. It was his own, from before we fell. Echoed. Preserved. He trembled. I pressed him close and whispered, "The walls do not." A line of blue light appeared on the stone, crawling like veins toward a hidden heart. The pyramid, too, was alive and lonely. When we breathed in sync, the light grew brighter. 3 beats. The wall cracked open. A whisper slid out, warm, human. "Follow the voice," I told him. "Sometimes the way forward sounds like your own fear." We entered a room shaped like a circle, its center filled with a pool of liquid light. The surface reflected nothing, yet shimmered with the rhythm of breath. He leaned over it, curious. I warned him, like him, but he was already staring, and there, beneath the glow, another nose stared back. This one had white fur, golden eyes, and a voice too calm to be real. It whispered, "Your mother keeps you close because she fears the dark." He gasped. I could feel his pulse against mine. But the reflections. Then it turned to me and said, "You keep him near not from love." But I wanted to deny it, but truth always hides inside the softest cruelty. The chamber began to quake. The reflections multiplied, thousands of them. Each mirror showed a version of us, some crying, some leaving, some embracing. The echoes turned to songs, and the songs to sobs of stone. I called his name, but the mirrors kept it for themselves. I shut my eyes, found the rhythm, 3 beats, 1 pause and breathed. Slowly, the mirrors began to hum in harmony. They were listening. I told him, softly sing back. And he did. The walls vibrated. The reflections melted into light. When it was over, we stood in a room empty and alive. No sound, no shadow. He looked up at me. Was that the goddess? He asked. Perhaps, I said. Or perhaps she was listening through us. We followed the last echo toward the far wall, where a faint golden script began. Next chamber, the mirror of moonlight. I touched the word. It hummed beneath my paw like a heartbeat. Behind us, the echo whispered one final time, "Do not run from the voice." We stepped forward together into a silence shaped like light, and I realized we had not been hearing the pyramid at all. 200,003 to 58,000. Nose were brushed against mine. He was trembling, not with fear, but with wonder. We had entered a place where sound forgot its name. I could hear our hearts instead, the small drums beating the rhythm of survival. Every grain of sand hummed faintly, like memory trying to sing. I told him, "Listen to the sand. If you listen long enough, you might hear your courage." He nodded, closed his eyes, and let his breath fall into the rhythm. 3 beats, 1 pause. The same heartbeat as the dessert. The floor began to glow, mapping our steps with lines of gold. Each step a word. Then came a low vibration, as though the pyramid was answering our faith. Symbols rose on the walls, eyes, tails, paws, thousands of them. They were watching us, but not with menace, with memory. I realized they were listening to the same rhythm, the rhythm of mother and child. Suddenly, the air grew thin. The echoes around us began to speak again. Only this time, they did not repeat us. They began to harmonize, to sing. 1,000 whispers filled the chamber, rising like wind trapped in crystal. They were not ghosts. They were every sound ever lost in this place. Laughter, cries, prayers, meows, wind, all swirling in. I felt it in my chest, like being seen by the world for the first time. Then the song changed. It began to call our names. No, it breathed, matineeing each syllable a ripple of light. He looked at me. "Why does it know us?" I said. "Because we've been here." The echoes swirled tighter, and the floor melted into moving sand. The walls opened their mouths. Columns hummed like the strings of 1,000 harps. Every sound we'd ever made came back to greet us and forgive us. The light condensed into shapes, cats made of sound, walking between. One of them, pure silver, approached Noah. It bowed, placing its paw on his heart. He gasped, eyes wide, as the sound passed through him and settled inside. I realized the pyramid wasn't haunted. It was teaching us how to listen. The silver cat spoke without words. To understand light, you must hear. Then it dissolved, leaving behind a single echo, a hum that sounded like the word home. He whispered, "I can hear it, mother." And I whispered back, We followed the hum through a passage shaped like a throat. Each step deepened the tone until it became music. When we emerged, light cascaded from the ceiling, silver and blue, like frozen. It poured into a basin at the center of the room, becoming a lake of liquid moonlight. He leaned over the water again, and his reflection smiled, tired but brave. I told him, every echo is a promise returning to you. He nodded. The ripples spread outward in golden rings. They sang, low and tender, like a heart. The walls pulsed in rhythm. The air turned warm, and the echo spoke one last time. When the sound finds its heart, the light will remember its way. I understood. To move forward, we had to forgive our own noise. The lake parted, revealing a staircase of light descending deeper. At its base glowed the next chamber, the mirror of moonlight. He looked back at me, and for a moment, I saw the goddess in his eyes. Not Bastet, but the one we create when we love without fear. We stepped together onto the glowing stair. The echoes followed. As the sound faded, I realized the pyramid had fallen silent again. But this time, it was not emptiness. It was peace. We had given our voices to its heart, and it had given back a song that would... The final echo whispered as we disappeared below. The heart that listens will never be... 1 seconds, 600 hours... I felt the echoes thinning behind us, like waves retreating from the shore. No's paw brushed mine. He whispered, "It's quiet now." "Yes," I said, "because now it listens." We stepped into a chamber shaped like a heart turned inside out. Light beat gently along. Every pulse shimmered through the floor, up our legs, into our bones. It was not frightening. It felt like being remembered by the world. I told him, "This is where all voices rest after they've learned to forgive themselves." He looked around, eyes wide. "Then is this where Bastet sleeps?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe it's where she breathes through us." From the ceiling, strings of sand began to fall, each grain glowing like a note. They gathered in midair, forming a spiral that pulsed with our rhythm. 3, 1. I raised my paw, letting the grains brush against it. They rang softly. One grain landed on No's nose. He sneezed. The sound echoed. We laughed, and the laugh multiplied, turning the room into sunlight. That was when I understood. Echoes were never ghosts. They were laughter waiting. The spiral burst upward, scattering light like pollen. A path appeared beneath it, glowing. At the path's end, a wall shimmered with water. Images moved within. I saw villages, the Nile at dusk, cats guarding shrines of fading gold. No touched the surface. Ripples revealed to small figures walking beneath twin. "They look like us," he whispered. "They are us," I said. The wall melted into mist. A warm wind rose, carrying the voices returned, no longer echoes, a choir of every sound that had ever lived. They sang our rhythm, and the chamber answered with light. The sand beneath us lifted, carrying us upward like a tide of gold. Above, a doorway unfolded, not carved, but swung open. As we rose, the choir whispered, "The heart that listens will find the moon." We stepped through the door, and found ourselves in a corridor of pale stone glowing with silver. The air smelled of rain, impossible but true. Drops fell from nowhere. No caught one on his tongue and smiled. "It tastes like light." "Then light must be sweet," I told him. "Remember that, when the dark returned." Ahead of us waited another chamber, its doorway marked by the image of a crescent. Under it, ancient words gleamed. Next, the mirror of moonlight. I felt the air shift, as if the pyramid exhaled, releasing. Behind us, the golden echoes faded into peace. Ahead, we paused at the threshold. He pressed against me, heartbeat steady. "Are you ready?" I asked. He nodded. I was born in. We stepped into the silver light. It closed around us like calm water. The sound of the dessert returned. But now it sang, not whispered. And in that song, I heard the truth. The world never forgets those who... As the moonlight deepened, the story of the next chamber began to breathe. I carried the last echo within me, a quiet flame that would never dim. Because every echo, once understood, becomes a song of light. And every silence, once loved, becomes the beginning of another dawn. We did not look back. The dessert was still listening. And somewhere, deep below, the goddess Bastet smiled through stone. Her whisper followed us like wind. When the sound rests, light awakens. Then all went still. The kind of stillness that promises sunrise. We breathed together. One rhythm, one life, and the pyramid breathed with us. Somewhere above, dawn gathered her robes. Somewhere ahead, and the story, our story, walked quietly toward its next light. The echoes faded. Only love remained, humming in the dust. That is how the dessert learns to speak. Through those who dare to listen. We stepped forward, and the light closed like a heartbeat. The last note lingered, soft as a paw print on the edge of dawn. And somewhere inside that stillness, I whispered, "We're home." Fade to white. The moon's reflection rippled. The next story begins. When the echoes faded, only silence remained. But it was not empty. It was brief. We had walked through sound and shadow, and now found ourselves standing before a lake made of light. The moon had fallen into the earth, and its reflection waited for us beneath the glass surface. It was a perfect circle, unmoving as though time itself was afraid to disturb it. I felt the pull, not from gravity but from memory calling us home. The chamber glowed in hues of silver and frost, and every wall carried whispers of our steps. The air was soft, a lullaby sung by the stones of Besthet's heart. I remember thinking, perhaps light is simply darkness forgiving itself. And in that thought, I understood why we were here, to face the pieces of ourselves we had. The mirror did not show faces. It revealed truths we once buried. My reflection showed me a mother holding nothing, calling into a night that never answered. The lake shimmered, as if the moon felt sorrow for what it had to reveal. I wanted to turn away, but love is never found by looking elsewhere. So I stood still and breathed, and the mirror began to move like a living sky. Images rose, memories I'd forgotten to forgive. A lullaby, a promise. Each memory carried a question, and the moon waited for my answer. I whispered, "Yes, I remember, and I forgive." Then came warmth, a glow from beneath my paws, pulsing with calm strength. The lake's heart began to beat in rhythm with mine. 3, 1. That rhythm became the language between us, a conversation of light and breath. Slowly, the silver around us fractured, releasing thin rivers of light. The reflections no longer frightened me. They danced, hundreds of them, each one a memory that had found peace, each one a version of me I had forgotten to love. As the light grew warmer, I realized something gentle, that they are meant to remind, and every reminder is a path back to home. The lake brightened until it no longer reflected, but shone on its own, pure and alive. I stepped closer and the light parted for me, like breath making room for a heart. The sound that rose from beneath was unlike any music. It was forgiveness itself. When I looked again, the chamber was gone. We stood in moonlight. Beyond it stretched a corridor of sand and silence, both waiting to be heard. I knew the next trial would not be of sight, but of trust. The light behind us hummed one last time, a farewell that sounded like dawn. We crossed the threshold, and the moonlight followed us like memory refusing to. As we walked, I felt lighter, as though each forgiven shadow had let go. I whispered a silent prayer to Bastet, not for guidance, but for gratitude. Because even gods need to be remembered, and love is its own kind of worship. The sand below began to shimmer, alive again, breathing, waiting. It whispered in a voice older than wind, "The heart that forgives becomes the sun." And I thought, perhaps that is all Bastet ever wanted, for her children to remember how to shine. The chamber faded behind us. The song of the mirror still lingered in my chest. It was not a melody. It was a heartbeat, steady, forgiving, alive. We walked toward the unknown, and for the first time, I did not fear what I could not see. The moon above us dimmed, but the light within us grew brighter. The next chamber waited, and its name was whispered by the wind itself. The living sand lake, where faith learns to breathe. I took one last look at the path behind us. Only footprints glow. We stepped forward, and the moonlight closed gently, like a mother's embrace. The story of our echoes ended, but the song of our hearts had just begun. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of waiting, patient. I could feel the moon above us shifting, as if watching its own reflection with doubt. Every ripple of light upon the lake whispered, "What would you see if you dared to look without fear?" So I did, and the world unfolded like a wound remembering how to heal. The mirrors bent inward, forming a path of light, a river made of memory. Each step upon it revealed an echo of my life, some bright, some shadowed. I saw the day I found Noah among broken baskets and dust, a tiny and I remembered how his small heartbeat had steadied my own trembling one. The mirror showed me love not as perfection, but as the courage to stay when the air quivered. 1,000 reflections bowed in silence. The light began to gather between them, turning the chamber into a sky turned up. I heard a hum, low, endless, familiar. It was the sound of forgiveness taking. The moon's image on the lake trembled, and from its heart rose a figure woven of silver rain. It had my eyes, but carried no face, only light. It looked at me with a kind of knowing beyond words. Then I understood. This was not Bastet. This was the memory of her love in me. The figure spoke in silence, and yet every grain of sand heard her. She does not live above. She lives in every heartbeat that dares to echo. The silver dissolved into dust, spilling warmth through the chamber. Each particle drifted like snow, landing softly upon my fur. In that moment I saw, forgiveness was not an ending. It was breath. We stood in the light until time itself forgot to move. When the glow faded, the mirrors were gone. Only the water remained, calm. The lake's center shimmered like an open eye. A doorway made of moonlight waited there. I felt a pull deep within my chest, as if the world itself invited us onward. But the air trembled, and in that tremor, I heard the softest question. Will you still walk, even if the light ahead blinds you? I thought of the desert, the echoes, the songs of our fear. And I whispered, because courage is not knowing the way, it's walking with love as your compass. No press beside me, silent and sure. Our shadows merged. No longer. We stepped into the moon's reflection, and it yielded, welcoming us through. Inside, there was no ground, no ceiling. Only the world curved inward, as if the universe folded its arms around us. I felt weightless. Every wound in me turned into stars. No's voice reached me, faint, like wind. Mother? Yes, I whispered, because it has nothing left to. And for the first time, I realized the truth base that had left behind. Even darkness is part of the light. The space around us shimmered, as if nodding in quiet agreement. The silver glow faded to gold. The air thickened with warmth, the sense of life. Far below, I could hear the soft rumble of sand awakening. It was time. We descended through light that rippled like water. Each step hummed with a pulse older than time. The moonlight dimmed, and beneath it, something golden began to glow. The walls shifted from glass to sand, alive, breathing, whispering. We had entered the next temple. The lake of living sand awaited. The surface beneath us trembled gently, as though the earth itself had a heartbeat. The lesson of the mirror had ended, but the song of faith was about to begin. And as I took that first step forward, the moonlight behind me whispered one last word. Remember, not what you saw, but what you became. I breathed and the sand answered. It sounded like wind wrapped in a heartbeat. Ahead lay the living dunes, a desert that could feel and dream. We followed its rhythm, our paws sinking and rising with the pulse of the world. Each grain glittered, as if Bastet herself had kissed the earth awake. The horizon glowed faintly. Not dawn yet, but the promise of it. And in that promise, I heard the truth I had long forgotten. Light never. The mirror had not shown me what I was. It had shown me what I could forgive. I carried that knowing into the golden air, a gift from the moon to the heart. And as we stepped into the soft, moving sand, I whispered a prayer to the world itself. Let every shadow find its light, and every echo become a song. The wind answered, a sigh, gentle and endless, carrying our and in that sigh, the moon finally slept, peacefully within us. I closed my eyes. The warmth of the sand felt like a heartbeat against mine. It was then I knew. The journey no longer belonged to Bastet. The mirror had done its work. We were whole again. And as the story of the moon ended, the sun began to hum beneath the sand. I listened. It was faint, but it was coming. The pyramid would breathe again, and the world would remember how to rise. No press close to me. I could feel his heart, strong, certain, alive. Come, I whispered. The next song is waiting. And we walked forward together, to shadows carrying the light. Behind us, the mirrors glowed dimmed. But ahead, the sand. And in that shimmer, I felt the goddess smile once more. Because love had learned her final lesson. To forgive is to live. Fade to silence, the moon sleeps, the heart awakes. The next story begins in gold. The moon's glow sank quietly into the sand, like a memory folding itself into the heart. I felt the last ripples fade under my paws, and the silence that followed was not empty. It carried the breath of every soul that had ever looked into the mirror. And the air shimmered again, soft gold streaming through the cracks in the moonlight. That was when I realized the mirror had never shown the past. We had walked through memory, but what we found was promise. No looked at me, his eyes wide as sunrise. There was no fear. The moon above us began to pale, its light blending with the first color of dawn. For a heartbeat, I saw Bastet's gaze in that fading silver, tender. She did not speak, but I understood. Love is how God. The mirrors dissolved one by one, turning into fine threads of light that climbed. Each thread sang softly, the same lullaby I once whispered to my child. It was a song of return, of those who wander only to find home again. The lake brightened, then closed itself like an eye waking from dream. We stood beneath the silent ceiling of the desert night. The stars now are reflections in No pressed against me, and I felt his heartbeat echo mine. 3, 1. That rhythm had followed us since the beginning. It was not just breath, it was the path ahead opened, sand glowing faintly, alive whispering. I knew then that the moon had only borrowed our light, and now it was time to give it back to the world exhaled around us, and even the shadows felt softer. I looked at my child, and for the first time, I saw not a reflection, but it began. He smiled, small, quiet, infinite, and I knew Bastet was smiling too. We stepped forward together, and behind us the mirror melted into sand and stars. Each grain shimmered for a moment, then vanished into dawn. The desert had become a sea of light. The air tasted of warmth, and in the golden stillness, I heard the soft hum of something awakening beneath. The sand itself was breathing, rising and falling like a sleeping god. I realized then, the journey was not toward light, but toward... The moon's reflection faded behind us, but the warmth within remained. Every step ahead glowed faintly, each footfall writing a new story into the desert. The wind swept past, soft and low, and for an instant, not divine, not ghostly, just the joy of something once broken. Now we followed that laughter, and it led us to a faint pulse beneath the dunes. The lake of living sand, its breath rising like mist. The next trial awaited, and I was no longer afraid. For I had learned that light never asks where you have been. It only asks if you're ready to begin. No looked up at me, eyes full of sunrise. We didn't need to speak. The moon had taught us silence, and silence had taught us to listen. We stepped onto the living dunes. They shifted, warm and welcoming. Each movement sang softly, 1,000 grains, 1,000 heartbeats. I knew the world was listening now. And in that quiet, so was the reflection of the moon faded completely. The desert dawned. We were not beneath the sky anymore. We were part of it, and in that vast stillness, I finally understood Bastet's gift. She had not given us power. She had given us the memory of light. To remember is to live. To forgive is to shine. And so, with the first true breath of morning, we walked into the living sand. Behind us, the mirror of moonlight sighed once more. A final lullaby. Ahead of us, the desert waited, endless, bright, full of song. I felt the rhythm return beneath my paws. 3, 1, 3, 1. The same rhythm as breath. The same rhythm as love. The wind rose gently, carrying our shadows forward like wings. And somewhere beyond the dunes, a new song began, low, golden, alive. It called not to fear, not to gods, but to every heart. That was how the moon said goodbye, not with light, but with love. And as the horizon glowed, I whispered to the wind one last truth. The heart that forgives becomes the dawn. The desert answered in silence, but I swear I saw it smile. So we walked on, and the world walked with us. The next story was already waiting beneath the sand. Breathing, dreaming. The desert was quiet after the mirror song. The air shimmered, and every grain of sand felt like we had stepped from moonlight into breath, the breath of the earth itself. The dunes beneath our paws pulsed softly, as though the world carried its own heart. Noah looked up at me, eyes wide with gold. Mother? And I said, no, my child. It is listening. For the wind here did not rush, it waited. It wanted to know if we remembered. Every footstep sank and rose again, as if the desert refused to let us go. And from beneath the dunes, a faint hum rose, slow, deep, endless. That was when I knew we had reached the lake of living sand. It was not water. It was motion, a sea made of whispers and memory. The wind circled the basin in spirals of gold, and light poured upward. Not each wave of sand carried faint patterns, heartbeat marks, echoing. I stepped closer, and the ground beneath trembled, a living pulse, older. The world was breathing, and I was only one breath within it. Noah laughed. The sound rippled through the lake. It answered him. But when I spoke, the sand stilled. It waited for something deeper. That was when I heard the voice, not outside, but inside my bone. A heart that forgets its fear, it said, can move the desert itself. I looked down. The grains shimmered like eyes. The lake was then the ground opened. The sand curved, spiraling, drawing us. I took Noah's paw. We did not fall. We descended like breath. The deeper we went, the quieter the world became. Each sound, we landed in a hollow of light. The walls pulsed gently, warm as... Here, the sand was golden, each grain glowing from within. It was like standing inside the chest of the world. And I realized, the pulse was slow, uneven. Something was wrong. Noah looked at me, his small chest heaving. Mother, it's scared. Yes, I whispered. Because it remembers too much. And then the voice returned, softer now, almost kind. I closed my eyes and listened for our rhythm, 3, 1, 3, 1. I tapped my paw against the sand. No followed with his tail. Together, we made music. Not loud, but alive. The heart of the lake stirred. The dunes above shifted, releasing weight. It was working. The rhythm returned. And for a moment, but from the deepest sand, a shadow stirred, a wound, unhealed. The air darkened. The light trembled. And the lake began to... I grabbed no, but the ground split. We were pulled into the current. Down, down, through tunnels that glowed like veins of gold. My trust, whispered the voice. Fear's only breath held too long. So I breathed and the current slowed, carrying us gently to the center. There, beneath a dome of glowing sand, was the heart itself. A sphere of light, trembling like a candle in wind. Its pulse, I knew what to do. We knelt, pressing our paws to the rhythm. 3, 1, 3, 1. Again and again, the song of... At first, nothing happened. Then warmth flooded upward. The sand turned liquid gold, rising, swirling, shimmering. No gasped, laughter and all mixed in his tiny breath. And I whispered, yes, my love. Because we believed. The lake pulsed stronger, and from its heart rose a single droplet of light. It floated to me, a shard of Best's spirit, warm as the sun. It sank into my chest and the rhythm steadied into peace. The sand brightened, a sunrise born underground. Then came the hiss, low, ancient, endless. A new sound beneath the... I felt it before I heard it. The presence coiling around the chamber walls. A voice like stone scraping breath. You wake the light, then you wake me. The heart trembled. Shadows rose from the dunes. A serpent's... Its eyes opened to suns turned black. The air froze. No pressed into me, trembling. I held him close. Don't look away, I whispered. Even darkness deserves to be seen. The serpent, Apophis, watched us, silent, waiting, and Apophis uncoiled, vast, soundless, ancient. The desert's breath turned cold. Even the heart of the lake faltered. Who gives the dead world rhythm again? It hissed. Its voice slithered between... I stepped forward. I do, I said. Because life still remembers. The serpent laughed, a sound like sand scraping through bone. You speak of life in a tomb of dust, and yet, even its shadow trembled. Behind me, No whispered, Mother, what if it swallows the... Then we breathe louder, I told him. For the wind is made from the lake pulsed again, faint but alive. I felt its rhythm. Apophis struck, a wave of shadow sweeping across the chamber. Instead, it bent, like a reed in wind, and the darkness stumbled. In that moment, I saw it clearly. The serpent was not rage, it was the fear of the world before light was born. And I could not fight fear, so I reached out my paw. My voice trembled, but I spoke. I see you, I said. You are the shadow of the same heart I keep. The serpent froze. Its eyes flickered, red to gold. Then what am I? It asked. Its voice cracked. The first sound of death. You're what remains when love forgets to breathe, I answered. And I have silence, deep and endless. Then the ground began to move. The lake glowed brighter, gold within gold. The serpent coiled. The air filled with warmth, and every grain of sand turned to crystal. I felt my chest burn, not in pain, but as if a second. Bastet's voice rose within that rhythm. You have healed what gods could not. I bowed my head. The light that had surrounded us folded inward, calm, and the lake's surface grew still again. But it was no longer restless. From its center rose a soft glow, a path spiraling upward. The walls opened to the sound of wind and heartbeat. The way out had no pressed against me, his eyes shimmering like twin suns. Mother, we did it, he said. And I smiled. No, we climbed the spiral of light, each step carrying the whisper of the world reborn. When we reached the surface, dawn had returned, but gentler. The desert stretched before us like an ocean of gold. Every dune shimmered with new breath. We walked across it in silence. The sand beneath hummed in rhythm, our rhythm. For the first time, the world felt whole. Even the wind sounded content. But then, far ahead, I saw movement, ripples where no wind blew. The dunes parted, revealing a stairway of stone, descending in, and on the wall above it, letters of fire appeared, ancient, divine. The next chamber awaits. The voices in the wall. No looked at me, fear flickering in his eyes. Must we? Yes, I said gently, because the only way out is through. We stepped toward the stone stair, and the wind whispered farewell behind us. Every grain of sand glittered, as if bowing to the rhythm it had regained. I paused, looked back one last time at the lake. It was shining. Then I heard Bastet again, faint but smiling. You did not command the desert. Her words flowed into the air, and the horizon brightened like a promise kept. We descended the stairs together. The light behind us faded, but below, the sound of whispers began, soft, many, layered. They did not frighten me. I had learned that every voice is only an echo. The walls glowed faintly, their texture rippling like skin alive with memory. The echoes gathered around, and I felt them brush against my fur like warm air. Each whisper was a word unspoken, each sound a soul unfinished. Noah looked up at me. Mother, what are they saying? They're remembering. And I knew this was the next lesson, not light, not breath. The desert had sung. Now it was time for the walls to speak. And in that moment of stillness, I felt Bastet's gaze again, close, proud. The trial of the living sand had ended. But the heart within me had just... I took one last breath of gold and stepped into the chamber of voices. The echoes rose around us, forming a chord. Warm, fragile, endless. We did not speak. We listened. The echoes circled us like smoke made of voices, each whisper carrying a memory to... I felt them drift through my fur, gentle, uncertain, like children afraid to speak. The walls trembled, not with sound, but with longing. Mother? Noah whispered. Are they alive? And I said, every voice... The air grew warmer. The whispers thickened into words, soft and broken. They spoke of the old sun, the lost songs, the silence after the god. One voice rose above the rest, weary, sacred, kind. I closed my eyes and answered, because silence had forgotten how to listen. The chamber shimmered. Light pulsed through the walls like veins rekindled. The whispers melted into a single tone, low, pure, as if the earth itself. And from that tone rose music. Faint at first, then blooming. It was not made of instruments or wind, but of the very memories. I saw faces in the glow, shadows of cats, of women, of stars reborn. They sang without words, and the air around us rippled like water. Noah reached out, touching the wall. The music bent around his paw. He laughed, bright and fearless. The walls are singing with me. And I smiled, realizing that the walls were not cursed. They were lonely. So I began to hum. A melody from long ago. The chamber listened, then joined. 1,000 notes answering one. The sound grew until the air itself shone, a golden fog that wrapped us in warmth. Each note became light, and each light a heartbeat. Then the voices faded, not in fear, but in peace. The chamber opened, its walls parting like curtains to reveal the dawn. We stepped out into sunlight. The desert stretched before us. The lake of living sand was quiet now, but beneath it, I turned to Noah. His fur caught the light like molten gold. You see? I whispered. Even silence has a song. He nodded, eyes bright as the sun itself. Then, what comes next? I looked toward the horizon, where the dunes met the sky like folded wings. Far in the distance, a shimmer of silver rose, a gate half buried. Upon it glowed the next sign of Bastet, the temple of sound. My chest tightened. The words seemed to breathe, to wait for us. Noah's tail brushed mine. Will it be dangerous? He asked. Only if we forget to listen, I said. And we walked forward together. The desert wind followed us, soft, content, whispering our names. The sun rose higher, spilling gold into our shadows. Each footprint hummed faintly, a fragment of the song we had awakened. And in that rhythm, I felt the world's quiet gratitude. For a moment, I closed my eyes. All I heard was the sound of faith made real, and the silence after fear has ended. Then, somewhere deep behind us, the lake sang one last note. Not a farewell, a thank you. And I answered with a bow of my... The wind carried its final echo, and I knew Bastet was smiling through the... Her voice came soft as breath. The heart that listens will never drown. The words melted into warmth, and the horizon began to glow. That was when I realized the journey was not to find gods. It was to remind the world how to sing again. How to trust its own voice. The lake had breathed. The walls had spoken. Next, the sky. I carried that thought like a small sun in my chest. Its warmth guided every step. And though the path ahead shimmered with heat, I was not afraid. Fear was only silence that forgot its rhythm. And we had learned to keep. The desert stretched infinite and forgiving. Even its shadows looked softer now. Noah ran ahead, chasing a glimmering mirage. His laughter, I followed, smiling. Every sound he made was proof that the world had... And when he turned back, eyes full of joy, I saw in him the reflection of the goddess of light, reborn not in temples, but in the heart of... The wind rose again, scattering fine dust that glittered like stars. And as I looked to the far horizon, I whispered the promise I had once heard beneath the ones who walk together will never sink. The desert answered with light, a shimmer, a breath, a song. We were not alone anymore. The world was awake, listening, and in that quiet dawn, I felt what the gods must have felt once, awe. No pressed against my leg. Mother, are we still in the dream? No, I whispered. This is what happens when the dream learns to breathe. He smiled, eyes bright with wonder. The world shimmered back in answer, and so we walked, the small hearts carrying the song of gods. Behind us, the living sand lake pulsed one last time and sank peace. Ahead, the temple of sound waited, glowing faintly, like the next verse of a... I took a deep breath of gold. It tasted of warmth and of beginnings. That's voice came, almost laughter now, you see. Child of light. The sky shimmered, the wind bowed, and I whispered back. We walked toward the silver gate. The rhythm followed. 3, 1, and in that steady beat, the whole desert began to hum once more. It was no longer a tune. It was a living song. The light wrapped around us and I felt the world exhale in peace. We had come seeking gods. We found ourselves instead. And that, I realized, was the true heartbeat of creation. When love remembers its rhythm, even sand can sing. We crossed into sunlight, and the world felt lighter than it had ever been. The lake behind us faded into legend, but the music stayed. Every breath carried it, every silence guarded it. And so we walked, mother and child, between yesterday's shadow and... Ahead, the dunes glittered like sleeping lions. Behind, I whispered, thank you to the desert, to waste it, to the silence. The sky blazed open, a new sun rising from within the earth. We stopped, eyes wide. The dawn was no longer something to... Warmth touched every shadow, and for the first time, I saw no difference between... Both had taught us to breathe. Both had given us voice. And in that harmony, the story of the living sand came to rest. Not ended, not forgotten, simply at peace. I looked at my child. He smiled.